So many people have asked me. I think it's time that I should at the very least provide some clarity on what happened. Fortunately or unfortunately, Sandra and I turned out to be certainly the only, but maybe the first as well, Black Hasidic Jews in my community. And one of the prominent members told me outright that he despised our very existence. Matter of fact, he was given to calling us the abominations. And very bad things started to happen to us. So I told the appropriate parties in my soul, told my Rebbe. His response was to persevere. Okay, I'm black. I know a little bit about persevering. And, but it got much worse. I mean, much, much worse. And some of the things that were happening to us, including the criminal damage to property and all of that, was unconscionable. So finally, while making numerous requests and speaking directly to this prominent member of the community, I stumbled upon a multi-million-dollar RICO operation. That in and of itself was not nearly as prominent, as problematic as the fact that the individual that was heading it was the same one who despised me and my child. Now, that was further aggravated when it turned out that Ruckles, my ex-wife's grandmother, had a fondness for me. And subsequently I learned that as a child she was transported from the same country at the same time, the same city as the Rebbe's father. And surprise, surprise, this woman that I had married, she was a Jew. She didn't know it. I suspected that Ruckel's grandmother did. But matter of fact, she said, I won't be one. I refuse to be one. So they went through all of this trouble to hide their Yiddishkeit only from this black guy out of nowhere to come and help convert their child to be a Jew among Jews. I mean, a Hasidic Jew, an Orthodox Jew, not just or a former conservative. So that was a shock to their system. But okay, I mean, God has done many miraculous things in my life, for me, around me, to me. So my whole life has been one big miracle, except that I would say working for Hashem, it is easier to be a Navy SEAL than to work for Hashem. It has not been anything resembling an easy road. And you can imagine being an outwardly Orthodox Jew is not a good thing for this environment. It's the worst time. I mean, I would tell you that there are 10 guys that taught me to read the Siddur. And at the time, I did not know that they were Holocaust survivors. There are many of Holocaust survivors, and several of them, to say the least, were not happy with me being there, learning with them, all that type of stuff. But at the time, I was a police officer. I had a gun. They couldn't exactly stop it. And slowly but surely, my persistence they liked. And they told me stories, very much like being in the way it was in the camp. How, don't believe the stories about that the atrocities were just the Nazis. I mean, there was Jews, to save their own hides, that did very, very, very terrible things. I mean, I know that gets lost in translation, but to survive, many, many Jews did some very, very terrible things to each other. And we had some frank discussions about all of that. They didn't leave because they wanted me to know if I wanted to be a Jew, well, this is what it means. This is what it could mean. They did everything to dissuade me. I mean, everything, worse than anything a rabbi could do. And when that didn't work, then they began to teach me. And I was born and raised here. I visited many of the synagogues. The kindness to me were the Reform and the conservative Jews. The Orthodox Jews were standoffish. The ones that were nice and kind were very, very nice and kind. But mostly, it was the conservative and Reform Jews that I felt the most comfortable around. However, coming from my parents worked for Jews all my life, and both of my parents spoke Yiddish. My mother was much more fluent than my father, but so you can, I was born in 1952, so you can imagine what it was like in Milwaukee. I mean, all the bus drivers were white. We used to have to sit in the back of the bus. I mean, there's a lot of things. I remember when I was 12 years old, there was a riot in Milwaukee, and all of 3rd Street from Atkinson all the way down. I mean, I know they named it Martin Luther King Boulevard now, and all these other different names, but Father Grappi wasn't just the name of a street. I was very much acquainted with him and what he was trying to do, and it was something else. It was like being, Milwaukee looked like being on the Gaza Strip. I mean, the unfortunate aspect is most of the places that burnt up the most were owned by black businesses. So that was more than unfortunate. But notwithstanding, I went away. I decided Milwaukee was incredibly racist, and I couldn't imagine spending my life in a place where people hated each other as much as they seem to hate each other here in Milwaukee. Notwithstanding, God tricked me back here. And moreover, the synagogue that I had the most fun was and was the most well received was now an Orthodox shul, the same shul where that Rebbe was kind to me. So I came back. Now, they didn't know I had already had a conversion, but I had both a Reform and a conservative conversion. So when I came back, knowing what it would mean to be Hasidic, I'd already had my Bekashas, I already had my my Sukkah, I already had I already had my Torah. I was already Torah literate. So, notwithstanding, I used to go to all my Rebbe's classes, and I liked it. It was a joy when sometimes there weren't a lot of people. Sometimes it was just he and I, but ultimately it was he and the Rebbetzin and me, and I could tell that was, I guess, going to be their alone time. She wasn't happy with me being there. She reminded me of the Holocaust survivors, the way they were with me initially. So notwithstanding, at one point when my child was 3, and it was just the 3 of us in the shiur, she suddenly said, "Who's going to marry her?" And I was like, "Who's going to marry who? And she said, "Who's going to marry Shangela? Who's going to marry my child?" And I was like, "She's 3 years old. Who's worried about marriage at this point?" And then I thought about it, and then I said, well, like, you could have said that about me. Who's going to marry me? What Orthodox woman wants to marry a black Jew? So I said, Hashem will provide for her as he has provided for me. I mean, that's not an issue. She's only 3. But after that, I never went to that shir again. And then when things started happening, and I would tell him about it, and he would do nothing about it. Finally, particularly after I learned about the RICO operation and the things that were happening, like the sewer water, the toilet water, the sewage was coming up not only through the toilets but from both sinks, including in the kitchen, and to the bathtub. Now, that's just a matter of you tell someone, they call a plumber, and that gets addressed. But it didn't. It didn't for months. And I mean months. And I recorded it, and I complained about it. And if you know anything about keeping kosher, if you've got sewage, raw sewage coming up through both of your sinks, I mean coming up through both of your sinks, and through the sink in the bathroom, and the bathtub. Imagine how horrific that would be. Finally, I posted what was going on Facebook, and they responded. And they responded real fast. But that was very problematic for me. And then, so finally, I went to several federal offices about what was happening to us, what was happening as it relates to the dwelling, as it relates to the hate crime. For instance, my sukkah was pushed over. Now it had a metal frame, so you can imagine what that meant to bend it over so that it could not be repaired. A lot of terrible things were happening to us, and in particularly to my child. So finally, we went to the FBI. We went to the FBI twice. And within, I don't know, a month of us going into the FBI, the multi-millionaire Jewish guy was found burning up in his car. Now, you would think that would mean all my problems are over, but it got worse, much worse for us. The retaliation went off the charts. And he had indicated it wasn't just him that didn't think that I should be there. And apparently they went nuts. Finally, at one point, a guy that I won't name, but I'll picture right here, told me that I should leave. And if I don't leave, they were going to raise the rent by, I think it was $500 a month. So I went from, I thought, embraced by the community to tolerated by the community to not wanted whatsoever in the community. So it became very nightmarish. And we ended up going to, besides the Department of Housing and all of that kind of stuff, and EEOC and all that type of thing, and nothing happened. And it got worse and worse and worse. I haven't seen my daughter in a very, very, very long time. What made it even more nightmarish is I needed to have total knee replacement surgery. And there was going to be a family court hearing, but the knee replacement surgery was going to happen at such a time that there would be no problem there. But at the very least, suspiciously, the surgery was changed. The date of the surgery was changed to within very close proximity of that family court hearing. I wasn't too concerned about it because I had a lot of documentation. I had recordings, video recordings, voice recordings. I had a lot of stuff, so I was feeling very capable. Well, I had that surgery, and things happened in the hospital that were very, very, like they were really, really bad. Really, really, really bad. One was that I had beforehand, when you're Orthodox Jew, you make sure that they have kosher food for you. So that was all done. But after the surgery, they kept just feeding me mandarin oranges. And if you know anything about that type of surgery, you need proteins quick. And they kept giving me mandarin oranges, and I was complaining. So I finally, myself, after begging the nurses and anyone else, why are you guys just giving me fruit? What happened to the kosher meals, the glatt kosher meals? And finally, the kitchen told me, and I can virtually quote it, but it was recorded. They said, "We're sorry, Mr. Ben-Ami. The food that they sent over for you is all freezer burned. And so we have no one down here, get this, to bless the food." So whoever I was talking to in the kitchen thought that kosher food meant that they needed a rabbi or a priest or someone to bless the food. And that whatever was in those little frozen food things were freezer burned, so they can't give it to me anyway. So in the morning rounds, I complained, and their response was to discharge me from the hospital before my pain was managed. They discharged me. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that they didn't give me any meds. They just gave me scripts. And I said, well, I mean, I'm having difficulty moving around. How am I supposed to get the meds? And they said, well, we just do the scripts. We don't have the meds. But these meds are readily available anywhere, and so anyone can get them for you. Okay. So that didn't happen. So I didn't get any pain meds until 8 days. On the 9th day, I finally got access to pain meds. And something changed. I don't know what it was, but going through that much pain. And by the way, the other doctors that were treating me, all those meds stopped. I got no meds. Nothing to sleep, nothing for pain. And I'm not going to go into it in much further detail but I hadn't understood how far up the food chain RICO goes, the influence and the impact and all that type of thing. So at one point I was going to leave. And I said, you went through all of this stuff in your life, Naftali, to finally come back here. Now, you knew this place was racist, but I thought, clearly I belonged here. And, we're talking about subsequently, the things that happened subsequently, from criminal damage to my property, to my car being damaged significantly, to my sukkah being turned over, to my talit being stolen, to my sidurs and my other, stolen from where I sat in shul. It would be stolen. And I did let the rabbis know. And only one person made a sincere effort to look for it, and that was Mrs. Armstrong. What an incredible lady. Because she searched all over the show. I bet you it took her a half an hour, and she found a maksur. There was the same type of maksur, but it was used. Most of my firearms are in pretty good shape. And, most of them are in pretty decent shape. So, so I said, no, that's not mine. And she said, well, someone made a mistake, and you can take this one though. And I said, no, mine's relatively new. I don't want that one. It's all war torn and all of that. So I just had to repurchase another one. But that continued to happen. I'm talking about they would exchange my new Talit Gadols for old ones, sticky ones, messed up ones. I mean, and when I would speak to a particular rabbi about it, I was told things like, well, we always said that the shul is like a black hole. Things just disappear from it and never to be found. Yeah, but it seemed to be only happening to me. And then things were only happening to my child. And it got really, really, really bad. So I didn't know that I was suffering from complex PTSD as a result. I didn't know that I was suffering from dissociative amnesia as a result. But what those other federal agencies and departments don't know is I recorded all those conversations. The one at the hospital, the ones with the federal officials and department heads, all those things were recorded. So it was just me being able to talk about it. And then when I would go to speak to the hospital corporation, the doctors that I had seen, I didn't want to see any of them again because they all just went away. And so I wanted to see new doctors. And once I realized I was suffering from something, I wanted to see a forensic psychiatrist. They said they didn't have one. I wanted to see someone who specializes in dissociative amnesia. They said they didn't have one. I said I want someone who handles complex PTSD. They didn't have one. So they only had people that specialized in like depression. I don't feel depressed. I feel a lot of things, but depressed is not one of them. I don't run this world. Like Lorraine Hansberry says, in Raisin in the Sun, I didn't make this world. It was given to me this way. Depression is not what I feel. But nonetheless, that's why you see those little clues. There's clues from diaries that talk about things that the guardian ad litem knew, because I gave her copies of it, that the court knew, because I gave them copies of, and none of that stuff, none of it appears in the court records. Matter of fact, the judge approached me. I even told him that I don't have pain meds. My leg is still split open. I can't go further. And I was told, they gave me, my lawyer resigned for reasons that I don't know. I don't recall. I never had an argument with her. And they gave me someone else. And he was like, he didn't listen to anything that I said. I was wondering why they weren't addressing criminal damage to property. I was asking him, he said, I don't have a doctor's excuse, so we have to continue. And I said, I can show you my leg. It's still split open. I don't have pain meds. I mean, it was really, really, really bad. So I don't know what they've been telling my child, that I don't care anymore, or that I just walked away from all of it. I don't know what they've told my grandkids, but you know what? We're going to talk about it. And if suddenly I disappear, I haven't committed suicide, if I suddenly am no longer on the planet, it's because they know. I'm telling. And this is like a made-for-TV movie. This can't be real life. First of all, I can't believe that people are this stupid. I mean, to do these type of things to someone who's completed 2 police academies, the Milwaukee Police Department and the Wisconsin State Patrol, did they think that I would let it all lie on my word alone? Which is the reason why everybody proceeded without me. So, anyway, I'm going to tell. And these are felonies, the things that happen. So if you see something in my posting, for instance, when we were at EEOC, they wouldn't even take the complaint. I was talking about what was happening to Leah at school. I was talking about what's happening to the household. I was talking about what happened to criminal damage to property. I was talking about what happened when I came home from the hospital and someone had been in the household. And no one would take it. And if you would ask them, there's no proof whatsoever that I ever went to those agencies. However, to get into those agencies, you have to, you get badges and you get stickers and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Those pictures that you see with my child with that sticker on her, that sticker that I took a picture of her outside of that office is prima facie that we were there and that we talked about what happened. So the local FBI office, I can demonstrate not only that we were there, but what was said. So, I haven't been able to talk about this for a very, very long time. I also suffer from spontaneous grieving. So there was a time where if I even would start to talk about it, I would just fall apart. So this is something else. But I'm sure, I mean, I have 5 sisters, and some of them are very Christian, so you can imagine they're not happy with me being an Orthodox Jew. Worst of worst, having married a white woman. Ooh. So I'm sure they believe that everything that they've done is fair and kosher in the market, but I would only tell my nieces and my grandchildren that I think the sisterhood has let you down. You will find, if you aren't already and I'm giving you a heads up. When you see the photos and you hear see the videotapes, I don't want anyone to say this is the first time they're finding out, because there are individuals that I've talked about this to before. But in case anything happens to me, I didn't just disappear. I didn't just ignore. The things that happened were so bad, it's taken a long, long time. And they still refuse to give me other doctors that specialize in the same thing. So I was forced to go to Mayo Clinic. So, okay, again. So I would say Shandel Batsheva, Leah Nicole, Rachel, and Sarah. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom to you and to everyone. And you guys ignore the fact that between my mother and Aunt Vi, I made a much stronger stuff than you guys realize. Nonetheless, Shandel Batsheva, Leah Nicole, Rachel, and Sarah, hug yourselves for me. And I don't know what age any of you were when you learned that sometimes adults lie. And they lie to little kids sometimes. And sometimes those lies aren't just a matter of there's there's a Santa Claus or there's an Easter Bunny, sometimes those lies turn out to be harmful and hurtful. And so for those people that I care about, for those Jews who have been incredibly kind, I believe there's going to be members of my community that are going to be facing felonies. And I think that's going to be true for certain family members as well. So that's just part of the story, but now everybody's got a heads up.